6, Hannah and Mark are both witnesses.
For the, yes.
Along with their witnesses.
Yeah, we're doubled up.
The ones that are.
No, so we're only allowed to have a roster of a certain amount of people.
Correct, I know.
So when we go to competition, only one side will go up, which
Yeah,
means
but-
that 2 people at least have to double up as an attorney.
As it's sitting right now, we're sitting like we're going in competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
At competition, it wouldn't be us against us.
I'm fully aware.
Mm-hmm.
I've read the rules. So, the 2 that are witnesses over here are witnesses for plaintiff?
Yes.
Okay, alright. I'm just making sure, so that I've got the makeup of where everybody is. Okay. We're not gonna go through the formalities at the beginning, okay? Because you know that they're gonna say, hey, you call a case, blah, 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 blah. Okay, alright? So that's a big waste of time, so we're gonna just start with, and plaintiffs, are you ready to make your opening statement?
Your Honor, plaintiff would like to motion to move about the law to the brief about the court. Your Honor.
Great. Well, are you the one doing that?
No,
And he needs
Oh,
to
but
make
it has
that.
to be.
okay.
When he's, but expect truthfully, from what I've seen at most of these competitions, they usually have a podium. So you'll just go to the podium.
Okay.
So, but it just depends. It's not done much in our courts and things, but that's what they do in mock competitions.
Yes, sir.
Y'all ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Remember, there's no communication back and forth. We're gonna treat this like a real, like, live. But between the bar, you all understand what the bar is, right? Yes. The bar is that wall behind you. There's no communication between the bar and over the bar. So like, just like in the competition, we wouldn't have any communication with, whether or not, witnesses are there, or it's like, if Ashley or I are there, because you can't answer, because once you're in and it starts, you're on an island. Okay? Y'all gotta be able to talk amongst yourselves for those. Alright, let's go ahead and start. Landis, you ready to begin? Do your opening?
Yes, Your Honor.
You got time over there.
Your Honor, may I begin? May it please the court, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Rashane Talker, and I, along with my co-counsel Kelsey West and Miles Whitmire, will be representing the plaintiff of this case. Our legacy is one of the most important things that we can manage while we are alive. Today, this case is about a man's legacy being questioned. We are here today because Nano Design recently died on the Tutu, a submarine. On the submarine, he left a will, and it dictates that all he owns will go to Ace. As this case goes on, we will ultimately prove that the intended beneficiary of this will be Ace. And we will also prove that this will is valid. The defense, however, will try to tell you many things. They'll try to confuse you with Dr. Northshire over there, a shady doctor who's being paid a hefty sum to be here, and a shady doctor that never even met Nano. They'll try to introduce you to Alex Trent Eubanks, a shady character whose motives are questionable at best. Along with this, we don't believe that he has any real concerns about disputing our case. Moving on, they'll introduce you to Mrs. Hamlet, Nano's lawyer, who has openly said that he was meticulous and attentive about his wills, and that he knew the will process better than all her other clients. As the plaintiffs, we have all the burden on this case, and we are confident that the testimonies of Dr. Clough over there, Nano's personal doctor, who met with him frequently, will be able to prove that Nano was fit for the dive both physically and mentally. Nano's trainer for the dive, Jackie Long, will show you that whether it was Nano's skill underwater or the training that they went through that was rigorous and prepped him for Nano's dive, oxygen-wise, will show you that the oxygen down there was more than sufficient for him. And we'll introduce you to Chris Leclerc, the CEO of the Aquatic Center for Exploration. She saw firsthand how excited Nano was for this dive and how thorough and involved he was throughout the process. They'll also help you establish exactly why Nano intends his assets to go to Ace. Throughout this trial, I'll show you how Nano was fully capable of writing this will, and why he intended for Ace to receive all of the assets. After we present all of this to you today, we trust you make the right decision to acknowledge that Nano's will was valid and acknowledge that Nano intended for all of his assets to go to the Aquatic Center for Exploration, or otherwise ACE. By the end of this trial, it should be abundantly clear that Nano had sufficient capacity and that the Aquatic Center for Exploration was the intended beneficiary.
Defense, you have an upbeat statement?
Yes, Your Honor, but before we start, may I ask permission for my co-counsel and I to move about the will?
Great.
All right. May it please the court, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. Today, you'll hear the story of an unwell man who bit off more than he could chew, and about the enablers who surrounded him. This unwell man was Mr. Nano Design, a billionaire with an interest in discovery and shipwrecks. When Mr. Design heard about an old shipwreck called the Ellie, he knew that he had to find it. And so Mr. Design reached out to the plaintiff, the Aquatic Center, about a project they'd been working on that he hoped would lead him to the Ellie. Although this project, the Tutu, was not yet ready, he was allowed to board it anyway. Leading up to this dive, Nano Design decided to prepare in every possible way. You'll hear about the doctor who ignored health issues, allowing him to pass a physical that he surely should have failed. You'll hear about the diving instructor who overestimated his capabilities. And you'll hear about the company who cared more about the bottom line than about the safety of their customers. All of these people failed him, leading to the events of his death. Mr. Design requested a physical from Dr. Terry Cloth, who allowed him to pass despite being unable to complete the tests. He also began taking diving lessons with Miss Jackie Lung, who claims that Nano performed incredibly well, despite some issues. And through all of this was his best friend, Mr. Alex Turn Eubanks, who was also his personal assistant, and who supported him despite his concerns for Nano's safety. All of these pieces make up the picture of an unwell man who did not have testamentary capacity to be writing a will in his final moments, 6,000 feet below the ocean surface. Due to his lacking health and unwell mind, it is hard to believe that he was thinking clearly enough aboard the Tutu to know what he was doing, which means that his holographic will was not valid. Furthermore, if it is decided that his will was valid, the ace that he wrote about was surely Alex Turn Eubanks, who had his back through thick and thin, not the Aquatic Center, whose negligence led to the events of his death. So today, I, Hannah Mobley, and my co-counsel Amar Salman and Yara Ismail request that you carefully consider all of the evidence and find Nano Design's will was not valid. Thank you.
Plaintiff, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. Plaintiff would like to call Ms. Chris Leclerc to the stand.
We're just gonna see, we're not gonna go through the formalities. Just at the moment. Cause I don't have the thing in front of me.
Normally they get sworn in before it starts, like she'll sit down like,
What do you want to stand?
you know, just go for it, man.
Okay.
Make sure you're alive.
Ms. Leclerc, can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
G'day mates, my name is Chris Leclerc and I'm the Chief Executive Officer and Director Manager for the Aquatic Center for Exploration. But I know that name's quite a mouthful, so you can just call it Ace. Everyone else does.
And can you explain your education?
So I graduated initially from the University of Sydney with a Master's in Business Administration, a degree in Aquatic Engineering, and several qualifications in maritime operations.
And can you talk a little bit about your background?
So in 2002, I began working with a company called Mills Maritime Machines, or MMM, as a captain of one of the vessels, and I remained there until 2016 when Ace reached out to me, requesting for me to become the Chief Executive Officer.
And how did you know Nano?
I met Nano in late September of 2023. He reached out to me asking about a project, the Tutu, that we had been working on, asking if he would be allowed to board it anytime soon.
And can you explain to the jury what the Tutu is?
So the tutu is a submersible that is meant to, it's new technology. We hope to use it someday for commercial diving, but it is allowed to reach extreme depths as of right now, and it's great for underwater exploration.
Mhm. And how did you go about talking to Nano about his interest in the tutu?
So initially when he reached out to me, I told him that he wouldn't be allowed to board the vessel because it was not yet ready. In order to be approved for commercial diving, it had to pass 6 underwater pressure tests, and at the time of his call, it had only passed 5. But he was very persistent and kept calling me.
Mhm. And then, can you tell the jury, what was that one requirement that it did not pass?
So the 6th test that it had not passed yet was supposed to be a depth of 20,000 feet, and it had not yet taken that test.
Mhm. So, how invested in the project was Nano?
From what I can tell, he was very enthusiastic about it. As I said before, I did initially turn him down, but he continued calling me every day for about a week after our first initial meeting, and eventually even sent me a recording of himself talking about the shipwreck, the Ellie, and how excited he was about the project and potentially finding that shipwreck.
Mhm. And what date did the tutu start its first dive?
It began its dive in the early morning of November 1st.
Mhm. And then, how soon after that did it lose its communications?
It was around 8 hours later, a little bit later in the afternoon, that it did lose its connection.
Mhm. So, what relationship, if any, is there between the power to the communications and the power to the other systems?
Objection, Your Honor. Compound question.
What's the relationship between the communication power and the other power?
Objection. I would like to re-raise my objection, please.
Your Honor, may I respond? I'm not asking 2 questions. I'm saying, what's the relationship between 2 things, not what is this and also what is this?
Always respond to the bench.
My apologies. I'm not asking 2 questions. I'm saying, what's the relationship between 2 things?
Your Honor, from what I understood.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. So, what is the relationship between the communications power and the other power?
So those 2 systems were not at all related. Although we did lose contact with the vessel, the communication system was down, but all of the other systems remained working. So the lights and energy power controls, everything was still perfectly fine while it was below the surface.
Mm-hmm. And what is your involvement in the creation of the tutu?
I worked with it very closely. I oversaw a lot of the designs and creation of the tutu, and I know it very intimately. I also helped with producing the communications system.
Your Honor, I'm just going to get Exhibit 2. Your Honor, may I approach the witness what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 2?
Yeah, the
My apologies.
Would you like the defense copy first?
William.
Exhibit 2.
Alright. Your Honor, may I approach the witness what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 2? So, Mr. Clear, can you please identify Exhibit 2?
So Exhibit 2 is the specifications and a brief outline of the tutu.
Okay. And, my apologies. Could you talk a little bit about the oxygen supply on the tutu?
Objection, Your Honor. Lacks foundation. This exhibit has not been entered yet.
My apologies, Your Honor. We offer Exhibit 2 into evidence and move to publish this to the jury.
Objection, Your Honor. Lacks foundation. This document has not been checked for any changes or alteration.
Mr. Cleary, is this exhibit very true to your knowledge?
Yes, it is.
And is this exhibit, my apologies. Your Honor, we offer exhibit 2 into evidence and we move to publish this to the jury.
No objection, Your Honor.
So admitted.
Okay. So, can you please explain the amount of oxygen the ship is meant to have?
So according to these specifications, the ship had a maximum oxygen capacity of 48 hours worth of air for 3 average sized adults.
Mhm. And in this case, what was the oxygen for the 2 people on the submersible?
So for Nano's dive, we had stopped P22 with 48 hours worth of oxygen for 2 average sized adults.
So, based on the numbers, what's the likelihood that Nano Design had enough oxygen to last him until November 3rd?
So, assuming that both men had survived down there, they would not have lasted until November 3rd because there was not enough oxygen to last them that long. But due to Mr. Jesse Watkins' untimely demise, it is likely that they did have oxygen, or that Nano did have oxygen to last them a little bit longer. I'm no expert, but it does reason to say that because there were not 2 people taking up more oxygen, that it would have lasted Nano a little bit longer into November 3rd.
Your Honor, at this time, I pass the witness.
Your Honor, may I get started? Good morning, Miss LeClaire. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well today. How are you?
I'm good. If you don't mind, I'll be asking you a few questions today. And just to get started, how long have you known Nano for?
I knew Nano from late September of 2023 up into the date of his death.
Okay, and how many months was that?
It was just under a month, actually.
Okay. And is it true that at first, when Nano contacted you about getting on the ship, that you decided to not let him on the ship?
Yes, I did initially tell him no.
Okay, and why was that?
Because at the time that he reached out to me, the tutu was not qualified for commercial diving.
Okay. And is it true that later you allowed him on the ship?
I did, yes.
And at that time, was the tutu qualified for commercial diving?
It was not.
So, just to be clear, you let him on the ship even after it wasn't qualified for commercial diving, which was the main reason why you didn't let him on previously, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And is it true that the Aquatic Center designed and built the same submersible where Nano took his last breath?
Yes, that is true.
Okay. And was the dive that Nano went on public knowledge?
It was not.
And, Your Honor, may I approach the witness with what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 3? And for record, I am tendering to opposing counsel. Ms. LeClaire, could you please identify this document?
So this is an email that I sent forwarding an email informing me of the deposit of $100 million into my bank account. This was sent to Mr. Jesse Watkins.
Okay. And did you write the top portion of this email?
I did, yes.
And to your knowledge, has it been altered in any way?
No, it is not.
Your Honor, we offer exhibit number 3 into evidence, and we move to publish it to the jury.
No objections, Your Honor.
Jury, if you could please pass this around. Now, Ms. LeClaire, if you could please read your portion out loud while the jury reads silently.
Jesse, see below. Can you even believe it? Round up our core team, our elite 8, and set a meeting at location Bravo for a meeting. Today, 11 a.m. Recall anyone on PTO. You have to be the captain. Also, have Christy look into the word November to see if it has any hit on our intelligence. Nano called last night and was mumbling and used that word a few times, so let's be sure we get it on any social media or publicity before around that thing. If there's any money to be made, we need to make sure that we get a share. but otherwise keep this top secret. Even the Navy cannot find out about this.
Thank you. And is it true that you wrote this top portion of the email?
Yes.
Objection.
Is it true that you said, and I quote, if there's money to be made, we need to make sure to get a share?
Yes, I did say that.
Okay. And is it true that we referred to, in this email, is referred to the Aquatic Center?
Yes.
Okay. Is it true that you said, and I quote, Nano called last night and was mumbling that word a few times, dash, so let's be sure we get in on any social media or publicity around that theme?
Yes.
Okay. Is it true that you previously testified that Nano's dive was not public knowledge?
Yes.
Okay. However, here on Exhibit 3, you encouraged publicity around the dive, so which one is true?
I was not encouraging publicity. I was trying to make sure that it did not become public knowledge. But the publicity that I was referring to was around the word Nanovembo, which is unrelated to the dive.
Okay, and what publicity were you looking for around this word?
Objection on speculation.
Your Honor, her own company herself asked about the word and tried to do research about it. I do not know why, which is why I'm asking.
I am unable to answer that question.
And is it true that Nano was a famous individual?
Yes, that is true.
Okay, and can you tell me what you mean by social media and publicity?
Objection on speculation.
Your Honor, social media and publicity are very simple words that the witness up here wrote in her email herself. Only she would know what that means.
The answer to that specific question is not brought up in my fact statement. I am unable to answer that question for you today.
Okay. And yes or no, tell me, has Nano's untimely death brought you publicity?
It's brought quite a bit, yes.
Yes, and has Nano's untimely death brought your company publicity?
Well, he was a pretty well-known public figure, so obviously that has been, it stirred up a little bit of media attention.
Mm-hmm.
But there have also been some suits brought against us from Jesse's family.
Yes, that's yes to my question, correct? About how Nano's untimely death brought your company publicity as well?
You asked me for an example.
I did not. So is that a yes to my question?
Yes, it did bring us publicity.
Okay. And could you please repeat the last sentence of your email?
Even the Navy cannot find out about this.
Is it true that the submersible did not complete every stage of its mandatory safety diving tests?
As I've already said, yes, it had not.
Okay. And could you tell me more about the depths that the Choo-Choo was cleared to dive to?
Prior to the dive, it was cleared to dive to everything below 20 or above 20,000 feet. However, the dive that Nano went on was only to 6,000 feet.
Mm-hmm. And is it true that the Choo-Choo did not have the Texoma excursion certificate, which is required for any vessel that sells service to the public?
As I have already testified, it did not have that certification.
Okay. Is it true that the Choo-Choo's critical internal switch circuit became compromised by the ocean pressure?
We have no proof of what exactly caused the issue with the communication system, but they were compromised, yes.
Your Honor, it is said at the start of the case that both parties agreed that the critical internal switch circuit became compromised by ocean pressure. It is in the statement that the two parties agreed to.
My apologies.
Is that accurate?
I didn't hear this.
It's in the at the start of the case
Stipulations
where it's like both parties agree on certain things. And one of the things they agree on is that
If
the
it's in stipulation, that's
yes.
okay. That's fine.
And I'll ask you again. Is it true that the Choo-Choo's critical internal switch circuit became compromised by ocean pressure?
Yes, that is what we've agreed upon.
And is it true that you designed the failed communication system yourself?
I did help design that, yes.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach the witness with what has been marked as exhibit number 12, and I will tender it to opposing counsel.
You may.
Ms. Luther, could you please identify this document?
This is the letter that we found on board the tutu. It was the last written note that we have from Jesse Watkins.
And is this true that this is Jesse Watkins' handwriting?
It looks to be so, yes.
Okay. And just to be clear, in your fact statement, did you say that, and I quote, exhibit 12 is in Jesse's handwriting?
Yes, I did say that.
Okay. And to your knowledge, has it been altered in any way?
No, it is not.
Okay. Your Honor, we offer exhibit 12 into evidence and we move to publish it to the jury.
Your Honor, objection, relevance?
Your Honor, this handwritten note by Jesse Watkins, the passenger on the ship with Nano, can show his slight mental decline when he was writing it, as he misspelled names and added people that don't exist, which applies to Nano to sign as well.
All good with me, Your Honor.
Your Honor, we are going to publish it to the jury. Thank you. And could you please read this note for us?
It says, Dear Dorothy, I love you, stay strong, Nano strong, sleep now, love, Watkins.
Okay. And are you aware of what the phrase nano strong means?
Not exactly, no.
Okay. And is it possible that this could be just rambling by a crazy person?
Objection, speculation.
I have no response, Your Honor.
Sustain.
I'll rephrase my question. Is it true that Jesse's wife's name is Donna?
Yes, that is true.
Okay, and could you please read the name that this letter was addressed to?
It's addressed to Dorothy.
Dorothy. And are you aware of any person named Dorothy in his life?
I'm not.
And is it possible that Jesse didn't remember his wife's name?
Objection, speculation.
No response, Your Honor.
Sustain.
Is it true that since the accident, Jesse Watkins' family brought some legal claims forward?
Yes, that is true.
Okay. And could you please tell me the outcome of these claims?
We settled each of those claims outside of court.
Okay, and yes or no, was there any financial incentive provided to their family?
Not incentive, but we did pay them
Okay.
to settle the claims.
And how much did the Aquatic Center pay to Jesse's family?
It was a pretty large sum of money. We are at the risk of going bankrupt as a result.
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
What was your response?
I asked how much the Aquatic Center paid to Jesse's family, and she didn't give me a proper number.
Okay, Director.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Any response?
I mean, I would like to say it's pretty clear in the facts statement.
As your opposing counsel said, it's very clear in the facts statement. So could you please tell me how much you paid to Jesse Watkins' family?
I don't remember the exact number.
Okay. And is it true that in the addendum to your fact statement, which you wrote before trial today, that you said it was $25 million,
Yes, that is true.
but you were unable to remember a minute ago, correct?
Yes, that is true.
Okay. And could you tell me how much did you pay Jesse Watkins' family in attorney fees?
We paid him altogether $25,000.
$25,000?
Misspoke.
Objection, Your Honor. Facts on evidence. They did not pay Jesse Watkins' family $25 and $25 million in total. That's not true.
What's your objection?
Objection, facts on evidence. She's creating facts.
I mean,
Your response?
yeah, Your Honor, just everything's in the same paragraph that he's reading from, so, I mean, he has access to the same information we do.
Is it sustained?
You gotta keep asking the question.
Well, is it sustained so I can ask the question again? But...
Yeah.
Okay. So how much did you pay to Jesse Watkins' family in attorney fees?
I'm not sure.
Okay. And how much does your own company's balance sheet show as of today that you have money-wise?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Your Honor, I'm leading into the fact that that Chris LeClerc's company, the Aquatic Center, is running very low on money, and the money they would win from this case would surely save their sinking company.
This is, it's overruled.
And could you please tell me, how much does your company's balance sheet show as of today?
We are running a cash deficit of $6.7 million.
Objection, non-responsive. I didn't ask about the cash deficit.
It's the same.
Could you please tell me how much your company's balance sheet, not the deficit, the balance sheet itself, shows as of today?
I cannot share that with you today.
Okay. Is it true that in your fax statement that you said it was $54.6 million?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. And moving on, when it comes to the Aquatic Center's financial situation, how is it?
As I've already testified, it's not great.
And could you elaborate on not great?
I did already testify to our cash deficit that we're running in.
Sorry, you testified, and I objected to no response, and that was not the question I asked. So could you please repeat it again?
Alright, as I've already said, we're running at a cash deficit of $6.7 million a month.
Okay. And is it fair to say the Aquatic Center requires a good amount of money to stay in business?
Yes, that is true.
Okay. And what does your company's cash deficit include?
Can you rephrase the question?
Yes, the items that give you this cash deficit for your company, what do those items include?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Your Honor, this still ties into the fact that Chris LeClerc's company is sinking and they need this money that they would get from this trial very quickly. This is an incentive for them to.
Your Honor, in all fairness, I believe the overall number is important. I don't believe that the little nitpicky stuff is important in this case.
Overruled.
Well, I'll move on anyway. Is it true that you previously testified in your fact statement, and you previously testified earlier here today, that the Aquatic Center would go bankrupt without this money?
Yes, that is true, as I've already said.
Okay. And do you know how much Nano's entire estate is worth?
Neto's entire estate?
Yes.
It is, to my knowledge, around $14 billion.
Okay, and do you understand the money that your company stands to earn from running this trial today?
As I have already said, yes, I do.
Okay. And can you deny that this money would save your sinking company from bankruptcy?
No, as I've said before, it would save us from
Okay.
bankruptcy.
Your Honor, that is all. We'd like to pass the witness.
Any questions?
Questions for this witness?
Yes, Your Honor, I would like to redirect the witness. So, Mr. Clear, why was the dive not open to public knowledge?
Well, we were mostly trying to hide it because it was new technology, and we didn't want other corporations or the Navy or anyone like that to find out about it so that they could then replicate that technology.
And then what is the inherent nature of the publicity you faced?
Can you rephrase the question?
What, if any, negative exposure have you faced from this incident?
Well, there's been a lot of media attention around these circumstances, specifically around the death of a beloved billionaire. We have also received some backlash just from Jesse's family.
All right, Your Honor, at this time I pass the witness.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Hannah, could you
Like, do you have any other
leave those documents up there because they're admitted already? Thank you.
We'd like to call Dr. Terry Fox to the stand.
Just go back there.
All right, Dr. Fox, would you please introduce yourself to the court and the jury?
Hi, my name is Terry Clough. I was Nano's general practitioner for quite a long time. I was a personal doctor and I conducted numerous surgeries on it.
So, what if any education do you have?
Well, I graduated from Granada Medical School earlier, and I have been interning at numerous medical centers, have done numerous checkups and physicals on numerous people before Nano was signed. However, now I am Nano's personal doctor, or was Nano's personal doctor.
So, what if any experience do you have within the medical field specifically?
Well, once I got out of graduate school, I interned and I actually got a job at a clinic where I looked over patients, I signed them in, I went over, I did their physicals. You could say I've been pretty experienced in the medical field.
Could you tell the jury how you met Nano?
Yeah, me and Nano were, you could say, high school classmates. We were pretty good friends then, but we kind of reconnected at a high school reunion, where, you know, I kind of spoke to him about how I didn't like my job at that one clinic. And he asked if I wanted to work for him, and I agreed.
So, how would you describe Nano at the time?
Well, Nano was always a little quirky, but he was a genius. He was very smart, always knew what he was talking about, very, very thoughtful with what he said. He was a great guy.
So, what do you say about Nano's like mental capacity overall, based on your examination?
Objection, Your Honor, not an expert.
Your Honor, this witness has conducted many mental tests on him throughout their years as a personal doctor.
Your Honor, he's asking about the mental capacity. This is his personal physician. He's only performed physicals upon him. He has no experience in neuroscience or cognitive abilities.
The doctor has performed the mini mental state examination many times.
You asked about from his personal experience, his mental capacity?
Yes.
His personal experience?
Yes.
You did not
as his
refer
doctor.
to a report? You did not refer to any reports. You referred to his personal experience with him as his high school friend.
Well, yes.
His high school friend cannot testify for his mental capacity.
Well, in fact, here it says.
What was your objection again?
Non-expert?
I'm gonna overrule the objection. It's not proper, not the proper objection.
Could you please repeat the question?
Yes. So what do you think about Nano's like mental capacity at this time?
Objection lacks foundation.
Overruled.
All right.
As you were saying before you were interrupted, his mental capacity, from my understanding from the tests that I've performed on him, he's never scored below a passing grade on those. So, in my opinion, his mental capacity was probably fine.
Mm-hmm. And how do you become Nano's personal physician? Please.
Well, like I said earlier,
Objection asked and answered.
Weird. So, could you tell us about how Nano hired you?
Well, when I spoke to him about how I disliked the clinic that I worked at, he said that you should just come work for me. He had a general kind of distrust of doctors, but me and him had known each other for so long that I think he was comfortable.
So, could you tell us about your responsibilities as a general practitioner?
Yeah. I met with Nano pretty frequently. I performed his physicals and his mental checkups on him, just to make sure he was doing fine. I've done multiple throughout my career with Nano, and I also did mental state exams on him.
Mm-hmm. Could you elaborate on how often these checkups were?
Yes, they were once a week. We met pretty frequently.
So moving on, could you tell us about Nano's Your Honor, may I approach the witness with what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 6? Oh. Mr. Clock, do you recognize Exhibit 6?
Yes.
Could you please identify it for us?
Yes, this is my examination notes for Nano to sign on October 2nd. It was my last physical before he passed away.
To your knowledge, has this exhibit been altered in any way?
No, it's still in my bad handwriting.
Do you think these notes will aid in the jury understanding your testimony?
Definitely. I wrote it.
So could you tell us about Nano's lung health?
Well, according to the physical that I did, his lung health was mostly normal. It was slightly below average, but nothing to be concerned about.
Okay. So I'm sure the jury has heard of this earlier. Could you tell us about the MMSE?
Yes, the MMSE is a mental state exam, which is done on patients to check their cognitive ability. This would include from trying to memorize locations, trying to memorize places and stuff, just kind of simple things that a patient would be able to remember or not. I perform those a lot on him.
So how did Nano perform on these cognitive exams that you gave him?
Nano, I don't remember Nano ever scoring below passing score. I think he was completely fit. I think he was fine.
So do you think what could these scores indicate about Nano and his mental state in your professional opinion?
Well, in my professional opinion, these scores could definitely indicate that he was of sound mental condition, sound mind, and that, well, in the grand scheme of this case, before going up the dive, he had perfect mental condition.
Objection, Your Honor, lacks foundation.
I'd like to pass the witness.
Permission to approach the witness, Your Honor. Okay. Isn't it true you had a friendship with Nano since high school?
It is true that I've known Nano since high school, but we kind of fell out somewhere in between.
Okay. Isn't it true that you make $250,000 a year when working as Nano's personal physician?
Objection, relevance.
Your Honor, I'm setting a foundation to understanding how his relationship with Nano reflected upon other things in his job.
Your Honor, what does the salary have to do with the relationship?
I'm trying to understand how dependent upon his salary was, how dependent upon the job was Nano. Was Dr. Clark.
Well, wouldn't that make Nano?
Okay.
Could you repeat that again? Sorry.
Isn't it true that you make $250,000 a year as Nano's personal physician?
Yeah, it's true. Nano's pretty generous.
And isn't that 3 times greater than your prior salary?
Yeah, that's what I love about Nano the most. She was generous.
So isn't it true that losing your job with Nano would be a remarkable financial loss for you?
Unfortunately, I would lose my job as Nana's personal physician, so yeah, that's pretty sad.
And isn't it true that prior to working with Nano, you were charged with Medicare fraud 5 separate times in a span of 4 years?
Well, technically, I was investigated for Medicare fraud. Never charged, which means I don't have any criminal record against me. It happens in the business all the time, so nothing to worry about.
That's not evidence you were charged with Medicare fraud.
It is my testimony that I was investigated for Medicare fraud.
Objection, last foundation.
Your Honor, we're trying to develop the liability of the witness and whether they. Permission for the jury to retrieve what has been admitted as Exhibit 6. Doctor, could you please explain what a stress ECG test is?
A stress ECG test. Let me go through my notes real quick. Basically, it kind of goes through to make sure that he has no heart or lung conditions. He actually runs on a treadmill for a certain amount of time, and as long as they do well with that, they're good.
And is it true that Nano did not complete this test after falling off of the treadmill?
Yeah, unfortunately, he was very embarrassed about it. Yeah, he got tangled up in some wires and fell down.
And is it true that that would put him in the poor category if you decided not to do so?
Yeah, but technically that's true. I did decide to let him get past that one.
And isn't it true that you were not aware that Nano was going on an underwater submersible upon performing his physical?
Yeah, I was surprised. I heard about it later. Did not know that.
Isn't it true that in your understanding he was only going for a scuba dive?
Yeah, that's true.
Moving forward, isn't it true that Nano developed breathing issues after a mountain climb in 2020?
Well, he developed some slight breathing issues, so that's true, but nothing to be worried about.
Dr. Cloth, you have heard the instance of... Isn't it true that forgetting information you once knew well was a sign of dementia?
Technically, it is a sign of dementia.
And isn't it true that having balance problems is a sign of dementia?
Technically, it is a sign of dementia, yes.
And isn't it true that Nano developed these signs?
Very technically, he did develop these signs, but if those determine dementia, then we would all have dementia.
Isn't it true that Nano design did not, or isn't it true that a CT scan is the most common brain scan used to diagnose dementia?
Objection, relevance.
Your Honor, CT scans are something that our witness should be aware of as they relate to the brain, and I'm trying to develop an understanding of whether or not Nano performed these scans.
Well, I'm not sure what CT scans would have to do with that, considering that.
CT scans are for their way to diagnose the brain.
Yes,
Regarding dementia, I'm asking if our witness here can tell us that is true, is that CT scans diagnose dementia, as they should be aware, since CT scans were mentioned multiple times in their fact statement, so we would believe them to be aware of what they do and their involvement in the brain. And so I'm trying to develop whether or not our witness tried to diagnose, or even investigated the dementia signs that Nano developed.
Well, you see, I don't think Dr. Cloth is able to talk about CT scans because they're not an expert on that.
You don't need to be an expert in CT scans to know what they do as a doctor.
Well, I'm not sure what to do.
I'm sorry, were you all involving me in this matter?
Objection, relevance.
Okay. Relevance.
Your Honor, this witness is a doctor, and they should be aware of what CT scans are. And I'm asking about dementia, and so CT scans involve diagnosing dementia. For that reason, I'm getting to the point of asking why they did not perform CT scans. Allow me to ask that again. Isn't it true that CT scans are the most common brain scan used to diagnose dementia?
Yeah, they're the most common to use in hospitals, yeah.
And isn't it true that a CT scan was supposed to, but was not performed on Nano during his extensive dive physical?
Well, it wasn't really a dive physical because I didn't know he was going on submersible. But
Non-responsive.
are you just saying unresponsive to me?
Objection, non-responsive.
What was the question?
I asked if a CT scan was supposed to, but was not performed during the extensive dive physical, and our witness went on to explain what the physical even meant, if it would, or why he was doing the physical.
Objection, last foundation.
Your Honor, I'm asking.
Overruling the Lax Foundation, but we're also overruling the non-responsive.
Is it true that despite your knowledge of all previously mentioned, you still gave Nano the medical clearance?
Sorry, could you rephrase that?
Isn't it true that despite your knowledge of all previously mentioned, such as his poor health conditions, his lung capacity, his dementia symptoms, you still gave Nano the medical clearance for this dive?
Yeah, I did.
Thank you, Your Honor. Pass the witness.
Plaintiff, would you like to present?
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to read those. So, Dr. Clough, could you just tell us how Nano was performing in the first 10 minutes of the stress CT?
Well, he was performing perfectly fine. He was doing great.
So what did you think of the fall?
Well, it was an unfortunate accident. It's happened to most people before. The wires tangle up some people. I should really get that fixed.
That's all I'd like to pass the witness.
Would you like to read it? Any cross?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Witness, you may be. Plaintiff, do you have any more witnesses to call?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff could call, the plaintiff could call Jackie Long to the stand, please. Hi, Miss Long. How are you today?
I'm outstanding, ma'am. How are you?
Outstanding. Can you please introduce yourself to the court?
My name is Jackie Love. I'm 50 years old, single, unmarried, but very ready to mingle.
And can you please explain your educational background?
Well, I graduated from high school and I went straight into the Naval Academy. After graduating from there, I commissioned into the Navy for about 20 some odd years. And about 4 years ago, I retired from the military and started the Dive and Survive Scuba Company, which I've been the lead instructor for 4 years now.
What did you do in the Navy when you were commissioned?
When I was commissioned in the Navy, I worked on submarines all around the globe. I specialized in sonar technology, which is basically the eyes and ears of the submarine. I worked with pretty much every Navy submarine out there, pretty similar to the Tutu.
When you mean what exactly did you do?
I worked with the mechanics.
Gotcha. And can you explain more with your experience on hypoxia?
On hypoxia, well, in my time in the Navy, I worked with special forces soon after I commissioned into the Navy. From there, I had this operation called Missouri's. Basically, what happened is I was shoved underwater, and from there, I went to the stern of a boat to put explosives on the back of it. I was in full stealth gear. The explosives went off. My oxygen tank was out for 5 minutes, and I was legally dead for 2.
Gotcha. And did you, how was your state of mind during those minutes that you were still conscious?
I was perfectly calm, just as I've been trained.
Gotcha. And how do you know Nano?
I know Nano because he was part of the IHT training within the Dive and Survive Scuba Company.
Can you elaborate more on what IHT training is?
IHT training stands for intermittent hypoxic training. It's basically training rich old folks to be able to withstand hypoxia, be calm within hypoxia in stressful underwater situations similar to the Missouri's that I went through in my time in the Navy.
Gotcha. And who, if anyone, did Nano bring to these trainings?
Sometimes he brought his secretary, servant, Alex Chern-Eubanks.
And how was Alex referred to? When
He was referred to as Alex.
Gotcha. And back to the training, when did the training start?
Training officially started on October 4th, 2023.
Gotcha. And what training specifically did you give Nano?
Well, I started with the basic ones that I give for the IHT, but he quickly went on to the more strenuous version of that.
Why did he accelerate into the more strenuous version of that?
Because he quickly went past all my assessments. I mean, it was crazy. His lung capacity, it seems like he had a ton of diving experience.
Gotcha. And you were talking about his lung capacity. How would you describe Nano's lung capacity?
Above average, especially for his age.
And can you elaborate more on the specific exercises you gave Nano in regards to the lack of oxygen training, the IHT training?
Well, it's very similar to what I went through in the Navy with the stealth gear that I was put underneath the water with. But specifically, one instance I can tell you about is when I shoved him down underwater about 120 feet. By the time you're underwater 120 feet, you're supposed to be out of oxygen already, and it's supposed to be shock to the diver. And basically, he went down there, I knocked the air tube out of his mouth, and he was perfectly fine the entire time. He was out of oxygen, but he was down there, he was figuring it out.
And so how exactly did he respond to these situations?
I mean, it was crazy. He was perfectly calm the entire time. He just figured it out. I mean, I was definitely messing with him, but he was perfectly fine.
Gotcha. And can you tell me about some of the things that you monitored while you were training?
While we were training, I consistently monitored his heart rate, his blood pressure, and his breathing, and a host of other metrics.
Can you describe these metrics?
They were perfectly fine. They were subpar, above average, not subpar, above average.
Can you describe what Nano was like when you were training with him?
Personality wise, he was a little bit aloof, a little bit distant. I mean, I thought he was playing hard to get, but you never know.
Your Honor, I'd like to, grab what has already been pre-admitted as Exhibit 2. And what experience do you have with severing similar to the one you see in the diagram?
With the blueprint there that I've seen before, it looks very similar to kind of the blueprints I've seen within Navy submarines when I in my time in the Navy.
Gotcha. And in your experience, what did you find while examining the oxygen supply of that specific submarine?
That it says that it has 48 hours, just like that other guy said.
Gotcha. And based off your experience, how long could the oxygen supply on the 2-2 last?
With the two of them in there, since they both knew the slow breathing techniques that I taught Nano, or whatever his face is, they could have lasted at least 70 hours, since they both knew those techniques and also...
Objection, lacks foundation.
Your Honor, the witness has experience with submarines similar to that and knows breathing techniques that could extend that oxygen. So she has the experience.
I'm going to sustain the objection. You may want to rephrase your question, Judge.
How long could the two men continue reserving that oxygen based off your experience with the specific breathing techniques?
Based off my experience with both of them using the slow breathing techniques that I taught, as I said before, they could have lasted at least 70 hours within that submarine.
Objection, facts not in evidence.
That is it.
We have provided in previous testimony from Chris Leclerc and from this documentation that the 2-2 could only hold 48 hours worth of oxygen.
Your Honor, that was for 3 people, and she's using not only the 48 hours of 3 people, but also the breathing techniques that they did learn. So based on
70 hours in the relation to is 70 hours.
Yes.
yes,
Overruled.
it's all correct.
Defense, would you like to cross-examine this witness?
Yes, I would like to cross-examine the witness. All right. Is it true that you trained Nano?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And isn't it true that Nano forgot your name multiple times while training with you?
A few times.
Mm-hmm. So is it reasonable to say that Nano had trouble remembering things?
Objection, speculation.
That doesn't call for speculation. She has already provided examples of times where he has forgotten things like her name, and so that is already reasonable to assume that he did have trouble remembering things since we have examples of him forgetting things.
Considering,
You remember my trainings.
All right. Did Nano ever bring anyone with him to training?
Once,
Who was it?
it was Alex turning Eubanks.
All right. Did Alex and Nano appear close?
objection, relevance?
The entire point of this case is to prove whether or not Nano had testamentary capacity and who Ace was referring to. So I'm trying to help show the relationship between Alex Turn Eubanks and Nano.
May I respond? How can Jackie Long tell if they were close if she only saw them together once? They could have been close that day and not close another day. It's one instance where they saw each other.
Jackie has not yet testified that she only got to interact with them together that one time.
She has, in my questioning.
Overruled.
All right. Did you ever hear Nano refer to Alex as Ace?
No.
All right. Did you ever hear Nano refer to the aquatic center as Ace?
No.
All right. And is it true that you experienced hypoxic death during your time in the Navy?
Objection, lacks foundation.
Overruled.
All right. So I'm going to repeat my question. Is it true that you experienced clinical hypoxic death during your time in the Navy?
On here, aren't I?
That objection non-responsive?
Sustained.
Um, So I'm going to repeat my question again. Is it true that you experienced clinical hypoxic death during your time in the Navy?
Yes.
And is it true that you claim to have maintained mental clarity in the moments leading up to your clinical death?
Yes.
But isn't it also true that you stated in your fact statement that you don't remember any of the events that occurred after the explosion?
Yes.
So how did you maintain perfect mental clarity during the moments leading up to your clinical death if you also claim that you can't remember any of those events?
Because the death happened after the explosives. I don't remember anything after the explosives, just like you said. Beforehand, I was perfectly clear. I was perfectly in state.
Yes. So didn't you experience your clinical hypoxic death after the explosion?
After the explosion, yes.
So how is it true that you maintained mental clarity during those moments, but you also cannot remember those moments after the explosion?
I maintained mental clarity right before the explosives, as I stated.
Okay. So how much did Nano pay for the training that you gave him?
It was $300,000 for the entire strenuous assessment, and it was also $2,500 a day for the place that he requested for.
How reluctant was Nano to pay this amount?
He paid it right away.
So is it reasonable to assume that Nano knew the sum of his money that he possessed since he was so willing to pay you such a large amount?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Is it reasonable to assume that Nano knew the full extent of his assets, given that he was so willing to pay you such a large amount for your training?
Objection, speculation.
The witness has already testified that he was very quick to hand over the money, which stands to reason that he knew what he possessed. Okay, I passed the witness.
Plaintiff, would you like to examine?
No, Your Honor.
Witness, you may excuse. Okay, just quickly, just for contact, where are we at, both sides?
On cross, they had 53 seconds, and then for direct, they had 5 minutes.
Okay. Plaintiff, do you have any more witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
Defense, would you like to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor, we would like to call Alex Chern Eubanks to the stand.
Hi, Mr. Eubanks. How are you today?
I'm doing absolutely perfect, sir.
It's great to hear. Now, Mr. Eubanks, of course, I know who you are, but if you would, could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, sir. Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. The name's Alex Chern Eubanks, also known as Ace. I'm 37 years old. I got a beautiful daughter, but just to be clear, I'm single and ready to mingle. Oh, I'm also here as Nano's best friend.
Okay, and what education do you have?
Well, I graduated at MIT. I went there originally for computer engineering, but match just ain't allow me, so I ended up going into executive hospitality management, which worked out pretty nicely because I got to work for Nano.
MIT, okay. And speaking of Nano, how did you meet him?
Well, I met him at MIT. He was my dorm roommate, or as I like to call him, my dormie.
Okay, and for how long did you know him for?
See, I met him in around 2010, so about 13 years now or so, yeah.
Wow. And how was your time with Nano as your roommate?
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, he was quiet, real quiet. I was super humble, never bragged, and I guess just, you know, the more we knew each other, the more we bonded, we just got closer, and we had each other's backs.
What do you mean by having each other's backs?
Well, you know, this one time I gave him my specially monogrammed handkerchief that had the words, the initials ACE imprinted on it, and he said that you are an ace. I remember this one time I used to, you know, get the groceries for the both of us, and he would always pay for his end, but eventually he just started paying for the both of us. I mean, we were close like that.
Oh, okay. And when did you decide that that would become your job?
Well, at graduation, me with my bachelor's degree, him with his 3 advanced degrees, I just felt like someone needed to help Nano. So I asked him if I could keep doing what I was doing permanently, and he said yes.
Okay, so Mr. Eubanks, what were your responsibilities when you were employed for Nano?
Man, I did a whole bunch of things. I handled his wardrobe, went grocery shopping, drove him / flew him to his appointments. I have a license in flying. Pretty much everything that wasn't, computers or business, but he could still do things like take showers and stuff like that.
Yeah, of course. And as someone who's known Nano for, did you say 13 years?
That's absolutely correct.
What are your thoughts on Nano's state of mind before the dive compared to what you've seen previously?
With all my years of being his best friend, I can certainly say that his mental decline was something I've never seen before.
And what leads to that opinion?
Well, there was a whole multitude of things, but I can confidently say it all started on September 15th, 2022.
Okay, and could you please elaborate on what happened on September 15th?
I absolutely can. So I remember this night, we were going to meet with some insurance broker who sold life insurance. I remember when we got there, that's originally where he found out about the sinking of the Ellie. And when he found out about that ship sinking, let's just say things got really, really weird.
Could you elaborate on getting really weird?
Yeah, so pretty much what happened was on the drive back, he just would not stop rambling about the sinking of the Ellie, which is really weird for someone who has a fear of the oceans. But that's not even the main point. When we got back to the tower is when stuff just did not make sense.
Could you elaborate, please?
Right, so, I pulled up to the parking garage at the tower where I've been parking in for years. And when we actually went there, I remember Nano asked me where we were, which was super, super weird. And I ended up trying to explain to him 3 times that we were at the parking garage where I always park. He ended up snapping and started to yell at me. So I drove around for around an hour, and he seemed to be totally fine for that night.
Okay, sorry, could you repeat what you said? What did you do when you told him that you were home but he didn't believe you?
I had to drive around the whole city for about an hour until I guess he got his routes memorized, and then from there, it was all right.
Okay. And could you tell us about any other times where his actions struck you as out of the ordinary, if there were any?
Oh yeah, there was a whole bunch of things. I remember later that day, on September 16th, he stuck in his room for over 2 weeks. So yeah, I can say that was really, really odd.
When you say stuck in his room for 2 weeks, was there anybody that could see him in between that?
Objection, Your Honor. Leading question.
Could you repeat the question? I apologize.
Could you, during these two weeks where he locked himself in his floor, could you tell me the names of the people that were out to visit him?
All right, so we got blank, blank, and blank, aka no one. He wouldn't allow a single soul to visit him, except for whenever he needed food.
That's okay. And can you tell me about when you saw him next?
Yeah, so I remember late September 30th, he came out of his room, finally went down to the 29th floor, where he told me the words center.
The word center. What happened next?
So he originally told me that we were going to the center, which was near the harbor. So when we started driving and I got there, I asked him what the word center mean, and he said that we were going to a company called Dive and Survive. Obviously I was confused, so I asked for clarification. He just started yelling at me again.
Yelling at you. Okay, and what came after that?
Well, we got to the company / establishment, and that's where I asked him if he needed for me to go in with him, and he just ignored me and walked off.
So in this instance of you driving down to what he called the center, where did you take him exactly?
The Dive and Survive company.
Okay, okay, I see. And if any, were there any instances after that where Nano had done something he hadn't really done before? And if there was, could you please elaborate?
Objection. There's two. There's compounds question, also leading question.
Your Honor, I'll rephrase the question. Could you tell me about any instances where Nano did something he hadn't done before?
So, one time I specifically remember was on October 2nd. Nano had made an appointment with Cloth, which was super duper weird. That's something that I'm supposed to be doing for him only. And I found out that it was an appointment for a physical.
Okay, and how do you know what happened at this physical?
Well, as someone who had been going with Nano to all of his previous appointments, I went with him on this appointment as well.
Okay, and what happened at this physical?
So he was doing physical fitness, and everything was fine up until cardio.
And could you elaborate on cardio?
So he was running on a treadmill, and he was doing just fine until he got tangled and got tripped up and fell up. Yeah, he got tangled with some cords.
Okay, and due to him getting tangled, what was the outcome of the physical?
Well, you'd expect him to fail because he didn't meet the requirement, but clots just passed him anyways.
Oh, okay. And you said earlier that you had been present for all of Nano's previous physicals. Could you tell us about why he had done physicals in the first place?
Yeah, so there was times where he wanted to go to places. I remember this one time, he went to a mountain climb, and let's just say things did not look good.
Could you elaborate on this mountain climb?
So the time he came back, he had some serious breathing issues. He was put on an oxygen tank for like a week. And that's not even talking about his mental health issues.
And earlier in your testimony, you said that there were multiple things that concerned you about him. Could you please elaborate on some of these things?
The biggest thing I noticed about Nano as his best friend is he just started acting in a depressed / manic state. And it was just not normal. It wasn't Nano.
And what, if anything, did Cloth do about this?
See, that's just the thing. Cloth seemed to just completely overlook his mental health. I don't remember her running tests. She didn't do anything. She pretty much just looked over it completely.
Okay. And could you tell me about your relationship with Wilton I. Hamlin?
Yeah, absolutely can. So, Wilton Handley was Nano's personal estate lawyer. So I actually ended up meeting with her over several times for appointments and things like that. It's also someone I talked to before the dive.
And what was the outcome of this talk that you had with them?
Well, when I was talking to Wilton, we both recognized that Nano just was not in the right state of mind. We both could tell that he was just not himself. But we knew for legal reasons we couldn't do anything like physically restraining him, so we had no choice but to let him go.
And to round this unfortunate story off, could you please tell me what happened on the day of the dive?
Yeah, so I remember, so on that dive, I remember driving him to the submersible, which I was very mad, and he was incredibly excited. He was so excited he nearly jumped off the car and just got onto the ship.
And could you elaborate more on what happened?
So I remember what happened was he was just so excited. I tried saying bye to him, but he practically ignored me. So I yelled at him, and I told him that he was making a dumb mistake, and that's where he called me Brutus, which meant traitor in the Roman times.
What happened after that?
Our last conversation. I went back into my limo and started crying because I called him dumb and he called me a traitor. And that was it. That was the last conversation I ever had with him.
I'm sorry for your loss. Your Honor, I would like to pass the witness.
Good morning, Mr. Eubanks. So, let me ask you, do you have a degree in psychology?
No, I have a degree in executive hospitality management.
Great. Do you have any professional experience in evaluating someone's mental state?
Can you repeat that?
Do you have any professional experience evaluating someone's mental state?
Absolutely not. I would not say so.
Okay, so can you professionally speak to Nano's mental state over the past 2 months?
On a professional aspect, I would absolutely say no.
Thank you. And also, did you previously testify that Nano experienced some bad lung problems after his mountain climb trip?
Yeah, after the mountain climb, he was put on an oxygen tank, and man, he had terrible breathing issues.
Sure. And did you go with Nano on this trip?
No, I actually waited until we came back, which is where I recognized and realized where all these problems had come from.
And do you have any professional qualifications that could allow you to diagnose Nano with lung issues?
Well, unless you're talking about my eyes and ears, no, I don't have any professional experience.
Okay, so you also can't professionally speak to his physical well-being.
Well, I could clearly see that he had breathing issues, so.
Objection unresponsive.
Your Honor, the witness is testifying to something he saw in person, right next to Nano to sign.
Your Honor, I'm asking, does he have any professional experience? And he's diverting the question.
No.
Okay. So, to repeat my question, do you have any professional qualifications that could allow you to evaluate his well-being?
As I said earlier.
Objection, Your Honor. His question was just overruled. I don't know why he's asking this again.
No, your objection was overruled.
I didn't object.
You had an objection.
Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Okay.
Sorry about that. So, on for note, how many times did you see Nano change his will?
He was someone that did it very, very regularly. He changed his will a whole bunch of times.
Mm-hmm. And
Can't give you an exact amount.
how many times did Nano address you as Ace?
He said it. He's told me that you are an ace. He's addressed me as ace. He's called me. He's told me that you are an ace. He said a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm. And was that in public or in private?
It was in private to me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so no one can testify that they've heard Nano call you Ace.
Well, to my knowledge, I don't think so. That's
Okay.
correct.
And also on that, has he ever called you Ace specifically outside the realm of you're in Ace or you're in Ace Ballet?
No, he's always just called me like that, exactly the way you said it.
Okay. And what did Nano tell you about his interest in the submersible, the tutu?
Well, he told me that he was going there to find out about the sinking of the Elf.
Mm-hmm. And also, is it true that you claim to be his best friend?
I'm not just claiming, I firmly believe, yes, that I was his best friend.
Sure. So how long were the two of you best friends before he adopted you as his personal assistant?
Whenever I met him at MIT, we just bonded and got so close. So for 13 years, 2010, yeah.
Objection on facts, not evidence.
What facts are not in evidence? Sorry.
In your fact statement, it reads that the two of you it was in your sophomore year of college that you started performing personal assistant.
Response, Your Honor? That's not true. In his testimony, it says that they met in their sophomore year of college and they were roommates. And once in a while, Alex Eubanks would do some, I guess you could say, assistant type things just to help out his roommate. But over time, they bonded. And at the end, when they graduated, is when he officially became his assistant.
That is when you officially started. That's when you started getting paid.
What was the question?
I'm sorry.
What was the original question?
How long were the two of you friends before you became his personal assistant?
And then during his testimony, he objected facts on evidence.
In the time that he was acting weird, did you testify that no one else saw him during that time?
For the 2 weeks you're asking about?
Yes.
Yeah, for the 2 weeks, that's correct.
Okay, so no one can testify that. No one can testify the same thing that you're saying.
Well, what I was saying is that no one saw him for 2 weeks, so I believe everyone can testify that no one saw him.
No, I'm saying no. My apologies. Let me rephrase my question. You're saying that. No one else could testify that he was acting strange.
Well, in my eyes, I believe that a strange behavior is locking yourself into, for 2 weeks and not talking to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I think everyone could consider that a strange behavior because he didn't leave his room.
But no one could even testify that he locked himself in the room for 2 weeks.
Well, I have 2 other assistants, but yes, that's correct. As of right now, I don't believe anyone in this courtroom yet.
Your Honor, this time I pass the witness.
Would you like to read that?
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Eubanks, has Nano ever done anything like locking himself in a room for 2 weeks before, to your knowledge?
No, before this event, someone who's known him for 13 years, this is the first time I've seen him do something this absurd.
Okay, and would you say that this is part of his regular behavior?
Oh, no. He was always a little bit more on the weirder side. But he was very, very smart, and he was nice most of the time, so no, this was not his regular behavior.
Okay, interesting. And could you tell us more about your university years?
Yeah, so I met Nano my sophomore year of college, as my dormie, as I said earlier. And I remember I would always do things for him, he would always do things for me. We were just had each other's backs in a sort of way. And yeah, that's where I ended up taking the job, senior year of college. I ended up talking to him, and that's where history began.
Mm-hmm. No further questions, Your Honor.
Would you like to examine?
No, Your Honor.
Witness, would you like to please?
Timekeeper of, at that time, they have,
Defense?
oh,
No, I don't want it in the middle of it.
no, but you need to,
She's got, where her second. Defense, do you have another witness?
Yes, Your Honor, I would like to call Dr. Max Northshire to the stand. Good morning. May you briefly tell us of your expertise and previous experience?
Greetings, my name is Dr. Max Northshire. I'm an expert in cognitive neuroscience and biological processes and aspects when it comes to human cognition, as well as also a forensic handwriting analysis expert when it comes to determining a patient's state of mind.
That's wonderful. Can you please inform us of your educational background?
Certainly, I graduated from Yale University in triple majors, forensic psychology and neuroscience. 4 years later, I pursued a PhD from Harvard in cognitive neuroscience.
And how is it that you became involved in this case?
I was initially hired by Nano's supposed best friend, Alex Eubanks, to determine if the contents of the red notebook were indeed written by Nano.
And what can you tell us about the writing style as it progresses through the notebook?
The writing in the notebook, it just gradually gets worse and worse by each page you get.
And who did you determine wrote what was in the notebook?
It was in the notebook, it was written by Nano, yes, but some of the ripped pages were written by just others.
Permission to approach the witness with what has been pre-admitted as Exhibit 1G, Your Honor. Doctor, can you identify what this document is?
Yes, this was a page from the notebook that was written by Nano.
Permission to publish what has been pre-admitted as Exhibit 1G to the jury, Your Honor. So what is notable of this page amongst the other pages?
That the handwriting for a grown man is actually terrible.
And what has this page been identified as?
As probably the last page was written.
And in your professional opinion, what does this entail of Nano's mental state at the time of writing this presumed will? May the jury please reference what has been admitted as Exhibit 12? And permission to approach the witness with what has been marked as Exhibit 12, Your Honor. Doctor, can you identify this document?
It is the last notebook that was written, the last page of the notebook that was written by Watkins.
And what does Watkins' handwriting entail of his mental state at the time?
Again, just like Nano, his handwriting had gradually just gotten worse, and for a grown man, it's really terrible.
And how would his mental state compare to Nano's, given that they were in the same submersible together?
It's very likely that their mental state they had both been compromised mentally, and they had both been experiencing the
And to your knowledge, how was Jesse Watkins' previous handwriting?
His handwriting before, if you flipped, it was pretty neat.
So in the past, what is your knowledge of Jesse Watkins' past handwriting prior to the dive?
It was pretty normal. I mean, it's just handwriting.
And how would that compare to his handwriting here?
Well, handwriting takes cognitive abilities, which comes from your mind, and for his handwriting to be what you could probably compare to as a 5-year-old's, it gradually just got worse.
Moving forward, it was mentioned that prior to the dive, Nano retreated to his penthouse for a full 2 weeks upon learning of the Ellie shipwreck. So what is your professional opinion of Nano's behavior?
Well, I would first like to say, even if not a professional opinion, that going into your penthouse and retreating there for 2 weeks, only revealing yourself with food is, well, not normal. But it also, I honestly don't know what Nano was doing while in the penthouse for those 2 weeks he was in, but who knows?
So how would you professionally define this period?
Well, I can, in simple terms, basically maybe call it a hallmark sign of dementia.
It was also mentioned that during the same time, or the same period, Nano failed to recognize his own home, his tower. What do you conclude of this behavior?
Definitely not normal. I mean, not being able to recognize your own house is very concerning.
And in your professional opinion, how does that relate to dementia, as you stated earlier?
Well, dementia is basically, in simple terms, when your cognitive abilities have become impaired. It can result from age or just bodily functions as a whole. So the fact that he forgot his home is quite concerning.
It was also later mentioned that Nano failed to remember Jackie Lung's name during training. What is your professional opinion over this?
Well, I mean, didn't Nano see Jackie Lung at least once or twice, I'm pretty sure?
I don't think I can. Yes. From your expertise, how difficult would it be for a doctor to recognize and diagnose these symptoms of forgetting?
I feel like you have to be a professional in neuroscience in order to properly diagnose these.
Just your facts on evidence. In the evidence, it claims that it's very easily to be diagnosed by any doctor. Dr. Roshire, can you tell us about the mental side effects of the body as it loses oxygen?
Certainly, simply just cognitive abilities become impaired and the whole body just goes.
And for how long can the portions of the brain involved in consciousness withstand the lack of oxygen?
Only a mere 20 to 40 seconds.
Permission to approach the witness with what has been marked as Exhibit 9, Your Honor? No.
Any objections?
No, Your Honor.
What is it at this point?
Do you recognize this document?
Yes, it's an autopsy report of Nano.
And does everything on this document appear fair and true to your knowledge?
Yes, it seems right.
Your Honor, I would like to tender this document into evidence and publish it to the jury.
Lightman?
No objections, Your Honor.
So admitted?
So according to the autopsy report in front of you, paper from the notebook was found in Nano's stomach. In your professional opinion, what does this entail of Nano's mental state at the time?
Well, from as far as I'm concerned, I don't think that consuming paper is quite normal. It most likely might show that Nano's mental state had already been compromised prior to the oxygen introduced to his cell.
Thank you. I pass this one, Your Honor.
Dr. Northchild will be asking you some questions today, is that alright?
Yes.
So isn't true you were brought in to analyze Nano's notebook?
Yes, that was what I was initially hired by Alex to do.
And you're fairly experienced with this field, right?
Yes.
But is it true you found confirming Nano's handwriting difficult?
No, not really. It was pretty simple actually. His handwriting was, well, no. At least flips through the pages. It was pretty easy, yes, but to notice where his abilities had started to go astray, that was a bit hard.
Your Honor, it says in your fact statement that there was trouble confirming Nano's handwriting.
No objections, Your Honor.
You testified in previous trials, correct?
Yes, I have.
Is it also correct that you've been paid for these previous trials?
Yes.
It's true you're being paid for this trial as well, right?
Yes, I'm being paid by insurance.
And you're being paid $24,000 BB.
Yes, total.
Is it true you previously exaggerated your testimonies?
Yes, but only in an effort to help someone.
And you've never personally met Nano?
No, this is just my professional opinion.
And you were never his personal doctor?
No, Ross was.
Is it true, as you were not Nano's personal doctor, you've never directly overseen his behavior?
Objection asked and answered, Your Honor.
Is it true that, as you were not Nano's personal doctor, you've never directly overseen his behavior?
No.
And you have no idea what Nano did during his term of period?
No, I don't think anybody does.
It's correct that you were never inside the tutu?
No. Yes, sorry.
Objection relevance, Your Honor. I don't see.
Well, I'm trying to say that she doesn't have any qualification or understanding of what happened down there with the tutu
Why-
because she was never there.
Response, Your Honor. I don't see how her being in the tutu would relate to her as an expert in cognitive neuroscience being able to diagnose Nano.
I will allow shortly.
It's correct that you were never inside the tutu.
Yes, I was never inside it.
Isn't it true that everything you understand about Nano was said by someone else?
Yes, in my own professional opinion.
And all your evidence surrounding his capacity in the tutu is circumstantial evidence, correct?
Yes.
Circumstantial is not equivalent to solid evidence, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you never personally saw any of these so-called signs of dementia that the defense is referencing, correct?
I only, not personally, no. Professionally, yes.
That's all I have. I pass it.
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Witness, you give excuse. Defense, do you have any other witnesses?
Yes, I would like to call Wilton I. Hanlett to the stand at this time. All right, can you introduce yourself for the jury today?
Hi there, name is Wilton I. Hanlett. I'm a 34-year-old resident of Texoma City.
And what is your occupation?
Well, I'm an attorney, but you may recognize me from the television as the Texoma Handle, where I handle it.
What is your educational background?
I graduated from Stanford Law School back in 2017.
And what is your relationship with Nano?
I was hired as his estate lawyer.
How long have you known Nano?
I met Nano 3 days after I finished the bar exam, again, back in 2017.
How often did you meet with him as his attorney?
Starting back in 2020, I met with him once a week at the Nano Tower.
And what did you two talk about in these meetings?
We would discuss his charity trust funds.
Speaking of, what is a charity trust?
Charity trust is a way to establish your assets in order to benefit yourself, beneficiaries, or your charities.
All right, Your Honor, I would like to approach the witness with what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 5 and tender it to the opposing counsel. you recognize this document?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Can you tell us what this document is?
This is the last revised charity trust document.
And is everything on that document fair and true to your knowledge? Does anything on it appear to be edited?
No, ma'am, it doesn't.
Alright, thank you. I would like to tender this into evidence and publish it to the jury.
No objections, Your Honor.
Alright, can you give us some background into what that document is?
So this document is the last revised charity trust, that we looked over and talked about.
Can you tell us why Exhibit 5 is important?
Because this is the last revised one that we overlooked before he went on to that.
And from your experience with Nano, how well would you say that he understood that trust?
I would say better than most of my clients, if not all of my clients. Every time we would meet up, he would look through these documents very thoroughly.
And did Nano ever mention to you why he was so particular about this trust?
Well, at his time of death, he owned 57 companies, businesses. He didn't want any hiccups by his death causing any ripples or changes to his businesses.
Alright, thank you. And Your Honor, I would like to bring up Exhibit 1G, which has already been tendered into evidence and published to the jury. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Alright, can you tell us what this document is?
This is the will that was signed by Nano on his submersible.
Alright, and can you go ahead and read that document out to us today?
Okay, name, Nano Design. I leave all I have to Ace. I forgive you. Signed, Nano Design.
And based on your professional opinion and experience with Nano, who do you think that the ace in this document refers to?
Oh, definitely Alex Turning Banks.
And why do you believe this?
I believe this because I heard Ace and Alex being used in the same sentence a bunch of times.
Can you give us a specific example of a time when Alex was referred to as ace?
I definitely heard Alex, Nano refer to Alex and say, "You're my ace valet, Alex."
And throughout all of your meetings with Nano, was Alex brought up in that trust fund or charity trust?
Alex was brought up a bunch throughout the years.
So he was always included in this charity trust?
Yes, ma'am.
Alright. And throughout all of your meetings, did Nano ever talk about leaving all of his worth to one person?
Oh, bunch of times. But I always advised against it. I didn't think it was going to be the wisest idea.
And who did he suggest leaving all of his worth to?
He said Alex.
Okay. Throughout all of your meetings with Nano, was the Aquatic Center ever brought up or included in this trust?
Not once.
And did he ever refer to the Aquatic Center as ACE?
Not that I heard of.
Alright, I pass the witness.
Hi, Ms. Hamlet. My name is Kelsey West, and I'm asking you a few questions today.
Alright.
Alright, so is it true that Nano changed his charity trust a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that he was not very consistent with how much he would change it. 3 months, every week, just depended.
Gotcha. And so is it true that Nano changed said charity trust on October 15th?
That is true, that's our last opportunity time.
Right, and considering Nano went in December on November 1st, in your opinion, do you believe that Nano could have changed his mind about what he wants on that charity trust in those few weeks before his death?
Maybe, I'm not too sure. Again, he was a little inconsistent with how often he would change it, so I'm not that.
So in your opinion, do you believe that he might have wanted to change it before his death? Or just thought about it?
Objection, speculation.
I'm using based off of her opinion as his lawyer, due to the fact that he changed it so much, in her opinion, that would he change his charity trust, or think about changing it considering he changes it a lot? Okay. Moving on, how often were you with Nano?
Again, back in 2020, we started meeting up weekly.
Gotcha. And in your opinion, is it true that he had a good understanding of his will?
Yes, again, like I said earlier, I think he knew his will more than most.
Gotcha. So, in your opinion, do you think that Nano understood what he was doing when he signed his will on a T2?
Oh, absolutely.
Gotcha. I pass the witness.
Would you like to reexamine?
Yes, I would like to redirect. All right. So you've previously testified that Nano owned 57 business units at the time of his death,
Yes, ma'am.
and that he was very particular about his charity trust. So based on that information, do you find it strange that he would have changed his entire trust while he was down below the ocean?
Yes, I would find it a little odd. From the start and when I first met him, he never changed those 57 businesses. Those were completely solid and set.
All right, I pass the witness.
Can you redirect?
No.
Witness, do you have any excuse? Defense, do you have any further witnesses?
No, Your Honor, we don't.
Plaintiff, would you like to offer your closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
Right before you do that, real quick, what was your time?
For direct, I have 25 seconds left, and then for cross, I have 12 minutes.
Okay.
Your Honor, may it please the court, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. Through the assemblage of evidence that we've come across today, it has become abundantly clear that we found out two things to be very true. The first thing being that Nano had absolute testamentary capacity whenever it came to making his will, and also that the ACE in question is indeed the Aquatic Center for Exploration and not Alex Trent Eubanks, and we say this for many reasons. The first being that we made abundantly clear that with crystal clear, along with multiple of our witnesses have testified that due to, and including Jack Gilling, that due to a combination of breathing exercises, more oxygen because of the death of Jesse Watkins, allowing for more oxygen to be used by Nano solely. And along with that, the autopsy shown that he would have died between the 4th and the 6th. It has become abundantly clear that he's had plenty of time to make his will. His will was made on the 3rd. I believe that was entered in exhibit, I don't remember. But the exhibit page states that it was on November 3rd at 23:45. That is before the date that he could have died, which was from the 4th to the 6th. We've also made abundantly clear that he has a very, very big interest in the Aquatic Center, and that comes from even his supposed best friend. He changed his behavior. He even talked to my client, Ms. Clear, multiple times, calling her every single day for a week, asking about, can I take this for the dive? I really want to go on the dive. And even goes to the point of sending a video talking about his interest in finding the Ellie. So on to that, once again, he had mental capacity in the 2-2, right? Lung said that he had at least 70 hours. So, just to make it super, super clear, he had enough time to make his will. So, talking about Alex, he's obviously not Ace. He's nothing more than a personal assistant, a shady personal assistant that has constantly been interjecting himself in Nano's life since they first met. He's never been referred to as Ace in front of everyone, or in front of anyone, really, other than being called, you're an Ace, which is not the same thing as saying, hey, Ace. It's not the same thing, Your Honor. And Alex even goes so far as to say that Nano had only ever called him Ace in private, which is very shady. Also, you cannot take into consideration any of Alex's claims about Nano's physical or mental well-being, as he is not an expert, has no professional experience, and also does not have a degree in any sort of field like that. On to Dr. Northshire. She has never seen or met the man, Nano. She's getting paid to be here. She has been known to exaggerate, and even if you do believe her, the evidence can speak to is circumstantial, which, as we have proved and as she also testifies, does not hold as much evidence as the direct evidence. On to Hamlet, Nano had previously talked about giving all of, on to Hamlet. Hamlet testifies that Nano had previously talked about giving all of his money to different people. This would not be out of character for Nano, furthering that Nano did have complete and total testamentary capacity, as this just isn't out of character for him. Nano on multiple occasions has talked about diverting the will to one specific proprietor. So Hamlet also says that he changed his trust a lot, furthering that he knew how to make a valid will, and Hamlet even goes so far as to testify that Nano knows how to make a will better than most of her clients. So, with that, Your Honor, with that, Your Honor, we rest your case.
Your Honor, may we make our closing statement now? Judge, jury, and opposing counsel, there is one thing that I think everybody will agree on. Friends can change. Friends that you've known for a long time may not be the same person that you once knew. Friends that you've known for, let's say, a day. Obviously, when you meet them again, it's not going to be the same thing. Now, Nano, before the dive, was not the same person that Alex Chern Eubanks met 13 years ago at MIT. He just wasn't. With Alex's understanding of how Nano was as a friend, who was someone who'd worked under Nano for a long time, Nano wasn't acting himself leading up to the dive. Now, in the opening, they said that they'll prove to you that Nano had mental capacity, and that he also meant ace as in the company. But, jury, it is clear to me, and I hopefully to you, that their side has done neither of these two things. At no point have they proven, beyond a reasonable doubt, that he had testamentary capacity aboard the Tutu to create his will, whether that's understanding the extent of his bounty, to even knowing what he was doing. For a man that had done and spent so much time with his personal estate lawyer, creating 57 businesses and different ways they would be distributed after his death, for someone to throw all of that work that he had never changed out the window with one piece of paper on that fateful day. That isn't Nano design. That wasn't the actions of a man who had testamentary capacity. The other side keeps talking about shady characters. They say that Alex Chern Eubanks is a shady friend, trying to steal everything that Nano ever had. But think about their claim for a second. Saying that our witnesses are shady, while forgetting about their own. Clough, Dr. Clough, who has been investigated for Medicare fraud numerous times, apparently isn't a shady character. We can focus on his best friend, who always had his best interests at heart for 13 years, but we can't talk about the shady doctor who was investigated for Medicare fraud numerous times, who let Nano pass a physical he never was supposed to. At no point did Nano meet the qualifications to pass the physical, which allowed him on the dive. But the doctor let him know anyway. Every single one of their witnesses failed Nano. Whether that's Chris Leclerc, the person who, after enough of money, let Nano on the ship, even if it hadn't finished all of its safety diving tests or even got its excursion certificate. A greedy business person who needed money for their failing company, which they previously testified would fail if they didn't win this case. That's why we're here today. Not because they believe that Nano was being generous. No, they believe and they want
the money from Nano's charity trust. They need it to keep their company afloat. And they keep saying the same thing, that Nano should and really wanted to leave everything to the company, the Aquatic Center. But his best friend for 13 years, his best friend that he mentioned in a conversation with his own estate lawyer about leaving everything to one person. If it was the company ever brought up in that conversation? No. There was one name, and his initials are ACE. Alex Chern Eubanks. Like I said earlier, friends can change. Maybe they started off as being an amazing person, but maybe you can see their true colors, or maybe just their conditions changed. Alex Chern Eubanks has clearly seen Nano's steady decline on every way of his well-being. From locking himself in a room for 2 weeks, doing who knows what, but to then coming out and be obsessed with a ship, which he hated the ocean, but he was obsessed with the ship. Is that normal behavior, or is that obsessive? That, and those are the signs of an unwell man who is not fit to write his will. He did not have testamentary capacity. And their side fails to even prove that even if he did, at what point did they bring any evidence that ACE stood for the Aquatic Center? I cannot remember, and I am sure that the jury does not remember either. There has been no evidence that directly correlates why Nano would have called the center anything but just the Aquatic Center. At what point did he refer to them as ACE? There is no such point that they have brought up. I started this off with saying friends can change. And that is true. And that is what happened here today. Alex Chern Eubanks became obsessed with the idea of looking for treasure. Who knows why he was what he was. And when he went down there, he, in his last moments of desperation, wrote a will. Not understanding what he was doing, he just scribbled on a piece of paper. Just like his fellow crewmate, Jesse Watkins had, spelling his own wife's name wrong. Nano did not have sufficient testamentary capacity. It is very clear through this entire trial, but they have failed to prove that. And if you do believe so, then we will honor your decision. However, they have failed to further prove that Alex Chern Eubanks isn't the ace mentioned in the will. ACE stands for Alex Chern Eubanks, a friend Nano knew for 13 years. Not a business that crystal clear said that she only knew him for 1 month. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we ask that you take a look at all the facts of this case and come up with a clear verdict. Nano did not have sufficient testamentary capacity. And that Alex Chern Eubanks is the only acceptable explanation for who ACE stood for. Thank you.
Plaintiff had 51 seconds, and then defense was like a minute and 20.
Oh, you gotta say stop.
You have to tell me to stop.
Yeah, I have cards normally, but I don't know how to tell them to stop in the middle. Like,
No, you have to, because I want to.
I don't know what
Okay
time.
for
I don't
here
know
right
what
now,
time.
because this is their turn.
This afternoon, though,
Yeah, this afternoon we'll stop.
this afternoon, you're gonna say stop. So
Okay.
if you have time, you lose it.
Well, first and foremost, what I wanna do is, I wanna give some feedback, of course, so we can kinda look at that. So what do you guys think you did well on? As a group?
I guess, the witnesses, I think we all know facts pretty well.
He just said, helping each other with objections.
Okay, what do you think you did we'll call it the worst on, as a group? These are things that you wanna examine, right?
Should work on pretty much everything else. Just experience doing this exactly over and over again.
Okay, so what do y'all think y'all did well at this table?
I think we did well with when we objected or got objected to, we responded pretty soundly. I thought our questions linked pretty clearly to our line, like what we were trying to say and the stuff we were trying to prove.
Okay, what do you think you need to make your worst? Area?
I think knowing our facts and then catching objections.
Okay. And from anybody out there, now I'm bringing you into, if you got.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I think for the most part, whenever people were asked questions, they could respond pretty fluidly and didn't come with any, like, thinking about like, oh, what am I supposed to say or something like that.
Anyone else got anything? What about you guys? You guys are included with that too. Y'all got anything?
Is it only for, I don't know, I wrote my stuff in like direct and clause like I can.
Yeah, so we'll get, so I'll just go over real quickly what some notes, and here's the deal, I'm gonna go down, cause I just went down with the trial probably like you did, right? Even if this, almost none of these things are independent to the person that did them, like almost every one of these things everybody did, I just made notes on it because it was maybe more prevalent or maybe brought it. So, one thing I wanted to hit, plaintiff's opening, y'all started talking about specific things that the witnesses of the defendants were going to testify to. Stay away from that. Like really, like, you can talk about, hey, that, you know, just generically, they're gonna bring up the doctor and tell their side of the story generically, but don't get into anything more than very generic. Does that make sense? So, and the language that was used, and I don't know if it's in your written down or if it was just part of, you know, ad-libbing, but you made a language of the, we're gonna make it abundantly clear claim. Be careful about putting your level up here, right? Because if you do, and you don't get there, you may not get your jury. So, and talk about more about what you're gonna show with your own witnesses. It kinda goes back to the other thing, right? We almost showed more about what the defense was gonna do, which you have no clue. Right? You have ideas, but you don't know for sure. Cover what you know. You know what questions you're asking your witnesses. You know what information you're trying to get in with your witnesses. So go rely more on that on the opening. Defense opening, the term unwell man was used. We might want to get away from that because one is, it's not used in common vernacular, right?
Mm-hmm.
So use something, just change that up, because if you're like most people, you will see something weird and you're like, oh, what's that? And then they're not listening to the rest of it, right? I don't remember who did that. I'm not sure exactly what we're trying to say there, because unwell could have a wide range of meanings.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, I'm assuming, right, which is not, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he didn't have his mental capacity. So like, oh, you got a frail old man, but what does that got to do with his mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can get into those. I thought the defense opening had a good overall theme, you know, like as far as the theme of like how things are gonna go. So I thought that was good. When the clear came up, okay, this is something we all need to do. Use the cheat sheet for laying foundation for exhibits. It's very easy, right? The questions are laid out in the thing, like, here's the item, here's this, ask them. It's redundant, you know? It's done that way. We do this for a living. And guess what? When I go to offer an exhibit, I have a cheat sheet that I pull out because I don't want to, if you miss anything, that evidence doesn't get in.
Mm-hmm.
Don't miss it.
I did have a question about that. On the one that I had to bring up where it had already been admitted into evidence, how?
We're gonna get to that.
Okay.
That's on my list. So the main thing there is use a cheat, you know, like we need to create a list and we can, you know, easily just create it on a note card or whatever, and y'all carry that to the table with you, and whoever's dealing with it, that's your list. Ask this question, and this question, and this question. Let's see, during the clear examination, there was an objection about a question about an email, like they asked about, is this your email address or something of the sort, and then somebody asked another question, did you send that email? and there was an objection. It was a good objection, but the problem why it was allowed is because someone else could have emailed from that email address. So in other words, just because you have an email address, like if you leave your computer open, could somebody else go use that? So that follow-up question was really more clarifying. May have not been the purpose of the question, but that's one of the reasons why it could easily be overruled. So defense side on there, I have good objections. Whoever was doing that, y'all would have been crossing. So whoever, they said okay after every response. So, and guess what? Gotcha. I don't know if you realize you said that one. That was
Did I?
Yeah, oh yeah. So that's on my list. But everybody's got something, we gotta get out of the habit of it. That just comes with time and thinking of it, like, it's okay to be quiet. It's hard, right? But, everybody's got their own little whatever it is, okay? I just made notes of it when I saw it. And then one of the things I don't understand on the defense side.
Hold on,
Yeah.
what's Mike's thing? Honestly, between every thought, he goes,
Doesn't
he's
answer.
good.
On this,
It's normal,
It's normal,
but you've gotta
but you gotta perform there.
you've gotta realize that you're doing that.
I don't do that there.
Not court.
Right.
He's doing that while he's thinking about the next fact he's gonna go over, he doesn't do it in court.
But that's what I'm saying, I mean, let's be honest, you're in court, when you're doing what you're doing right now, you're playing a role, okay? So, on the defendant, your cross-examination questions of Leclerc, I'm not for sure where you were going with the breaking down all the individual words. That may be a big waste of time. I think there's a lot more information that we can get out of Leclerc. It was in that email, like what is social media and all this, and it's like, I don't know, I don't understand that line of questioning, so we might wanna revisit that. Also, I have a general note in here, and this was almost for both sides on everyone. Ask more questions more directly with a yes or no response. I think we were asking a lot, like, I don't think it was Leclerc, but it could have been something about balance sheet. Somebody got into questions about, well, how much did you make? Well, you have the number, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it true that you made $25,000 off of this? Isn't it true that you did this?
Oh, the point of the question was not to go anywhere with it. I just wanted to see if the witness knew, and if she didn't know, then.
But it
But
doesn't get.
what fact does that prove? How does that benefit your side of the story that you're presenting to the jury?
The CEO of their own company, who before this trial in the case knew all the information up here, can't testify to that. So, if this CEO doesn't even know what they're talking about, how much can you trust them?
And you know how I would re-examine that? Did you have notes when you previously did all this? Yeah. Do you have notes now? No. I mean, I get kind of where you're going at, but it's probably not useful.
Okay.
The thing is there more information that you can get out using your time that would be more beneficial to this case at hand? Right? Because all these witnesses have positives and negatives, would y'all agree? So we wanna take out the negative, we wanna, highlight the major negatives, but the big thing is we wanna get the information, the negative information that they bring, for the other side. That's the big thing. So that was one of the things on there. When I went to the cloth examination, objection on okay, this goes back to your objection when I told you you're closed. You gotta object why. This person hasn't been brought in as a witness at that point, is really what your objection was, right?
Yeah.
But we didn't say that. So the witness hasn't been established as an expert witness, right? That's our objection. So for what you objected to, I couldn't grant you your objection. I knew where you were going, but I couldn't get there. And then on top of that, when y'all started going back and forth, you made it even worse, right? Like in your argument to him, you got further and further away from where you were. So even if I wanted to be lenient, you getting more of your thoughts out, you were further away than I thought, right? So, sometimes make sure your objections are always here. They're not, you're not dealing with co-counsel. Hey, co-counsel's trying to enter, or opposing counsel trying to introduce this document. I don't agree with it, and I'm objecting for these reasons. It's up to the judge. Make your argument to the judge. And if you continue to go on and you start doing this bantering stuff, or either one of you making friends with the judge, no. Now, guess what? Guess who else is watching this? Jury, right? So make your professional argument and leave it in the hands of the judge.
So what would that objection be? Like, what would the name for it be?
Basically, you need to be able to say that they haven't been established as an expert witness.
Okay.
Lacks foundation
So
to
it's not foundation.
testify.
So, it just wasn't, didn't get there. I tried to get it to get there, but I can't do it for you. But going back to whoever was examining that witness, you have them here for an expert reason. Get into their expert testimony. Like, why are they experts? Why are they this? So establish that. So, Dr. Clough is a doctor. Hey, tell us about your history. And then once you tell them about the history, then you can find out their history with that patient, right? But what about their professional experience? And then somewhere along the line, the plaintiffs used the term lung health. I'm not for sure if we really want to use that. That sounds kind of made up. How's your lung health? Right? That sounds odd. So maybe revisit that.
When I was up there as cloth, Rashane was entering the physical examination stuff, and he did everything he needed to enter it, but he never entered it.
Yeah.
He just is like, did you write this? Is this been changed? And then continued on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was not entered. But then later on, when Yara talks about that document as well, she acts like it's entered. So that was an objection for them as well. Because it never was entered.
Right.
What would
Exactly.
that be object, what?
Last foundation.
Okay.
Well, no, it's the fact that it's not in evidence.
Oh,
If it
okay.
hasn't been admitted, it's not evidence.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is both sides went on with it as evidence. So what would happen in that particular trial is it would end up in evidence, right? But the problem is if that was appealed, it was never admitted, so it would cause a problem there. Talking about real world type problems. So, but that goes back to the problem with that is what? No cheat sheet, therefore you don't have the steps. You can't go, if you have the cheat sheet, you don't have those problems, right? Step 1, step 2, right? Question 1, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Please admitted, done, right? Now I'm done with my checklist. So that will take care of that problem. So that's why I didn't really harp on that. And over on defense side, don't just object to object. If it's not hurting you, don't. If it's going nowhere and has no bearing on you, just deal with it. Like,
Okay.
guess what? What are they doing if it's not hurting your case? If it's not helping their case or hurting yours, what are they doing?
Wasting their own time.
Wasting their time. Let them waste away. Right? Kind of like going back to the questions earlier, breaking down the words, wasting away.
I feel like it
Let's see.
throws them off guard. Like, it just makes them.
Also, on the defense side, I think this was in cross-examination on this one, was make sure to word your questions accurately to avoid issues with your witness. So in other words, there was a question that was worded, the way it was worded, like literally you could change a couple of words and you could ask that question, but it was the way it was worded, it got objected to and was properly kept out.
Okay.
So just make sure we revisit. I didn't write down the exact question.
Yeah.
So on
And-
lung, plaintiff, don't jump into like, tell me about hypoxia. What is hypoxia? We didn't go into that with lung. What is it? Right? Lung's got the ability to talk about what hypoxia is, right? But we just jumped right into like, develop what hypoxia is. They don't know. You're over here acting like they're all doctors, right? So just make sure we're developing that piece. And then also you brought up on the plaintiff side, somewhere ask a question really quickly about what they called Alex. And like literally just like it was like right over it.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a big piece of evidence. You want to highlight it, right? If it's helping your case, like they gave you the perfect evidence, The good news about you not highlighting it is the defense didn't really go into it or try to counter it. But the problem is the jury probably passed over it too because you did too. And this goes kind of with my other comment, slow down. It's not a speed race. It's not, hey, you're not, it's not like, not a machine gun exchange, right? It's not like, so witness and attorney. So you don't need because guess what? That jury may be there, have been there for a while. They're not gonna wanna go. I mean, literally, and I don't know if y'all weren't really looking up, but literally during that exchange, I was going like this. Like, because I'm following the conversation. Like, you get tired, like that's exhausting, right? So don't do that to your people. Especially your jury. So defense on that same interaction, cross-examination, you won an objection over a question, and then you didn't get a response or re-ask the question. Like there was a question asked, it was objected to, the objection was overruled, and then you just went on like you lost the objection. So make sure you pay attention to what's going on because there was a question in there that missed, so they'll need information to get down. And like I said, this is just specifically, this happens several times. Eubanks and defense, this is on the primary, we need better questions. There could have been so many objections to narrative in that, like they basically just let Alex Eubanks come up here and might as well just had Alex Eubanks show, and y'all gotta object, right? You can't just sit there and go, explain. And then he goes on a 30-second narrative. I'm sorry, explain doesn't ask a question, right? Be specific with, if you wanna use the, hey, can you explain that, that response, that specific response or something. You can't just go, well, just explain that to us, right? So questions need to be, because here's the deal, if they're objecting to whoever's doing the questions over here, you gotta immediately be able to break it down. And if your questions aren't already broke down, then you're gonna have an issue because you're gonna miss something. So break your questions down in smaller bites. I always say it like this, it's an elephant, you're trying to eat an elephant. How do you eat an elephant? Anybody know? One bite at a time. Quit trying to eat the whole elephant in one bite. Piece by piece. On the plaintiff side on that, y'all have been cross-examining. One of the things I said, my note specifically says, why would you not object to testimony about what constitutes failure on a physical by Alex Eubanks? What in the world expertise does he have to tell you what is and what is not passing on a exam, a physical exam? So pay attention to the questions. Some of this, I get it gets kind of crazy, but and then so an objection earlier was just objection non-responsive, like during this process. The problem is I had to overrule you because the witness answered the question. So I had to overrule so that the answer comes in. They were actually non-responsive after they answered your question. So they answered the question and then proceeded to go on a narrative, right? It was a short one, but you have to be specific. Did they answer your question? They answered. So whatever the question was, let's say it was, tell me about, isn't it true that you did this or whatever? No, I didn't do that, but, and then goes into the objection would be non-responsive after no, because anything after no is non-responsive, right? They answered your question. If you just say non-responsive, they were responsive, and they answered your question, and then they gave you a reasoning for the question after it, and that's what you're trying to avoid or eliminate, so just make sure we're making the proper objection there. Does that make sense? Okay. So, North Star examination, who's the witness, who's North Star? You're, if I remember correctly, you're kind of on the side of Eubanks, right? Please don't refer to him as the alleged best friend. That sounds like you're not on his side. I'm just saying, like, does it sound good? So just, simple stuff that I catch, that if I catch, I'm gonna bring it up just so y'all can do that. 'Cause it just doesn't seem like, the way, especially the way you said it, it's like, yeah, alleged best friend. I mean, that's the way it came across, so it's like, probably don't want you to be testifying on that for half right. And then something about like testimony, I don't remember his question, but it says, I question the fact that somebody said dementia from staying in a penthouse for 2 weeks. I mean, people take vacations from a penthouse. So that may not be something we wanna drop down on that one. Okay, so one of the notes I have on here, and this is the first time I noted it, mainly because it was really evident on this one, but you can't ask a question and bring in information that has never been testified to. We did that several times on both sides, where you would ask a question because you've read the statements, right? You can't just assume that everybody else knows that information already. You've gotta get all the evidence comes from the witnesses. So kind of going back to it, what is hypoxia? We still don't know, the jury doesn't know, right? We haven't explained it. And you can't give a definition, right? Because you're not, as an attorney, you are not testifying to anything.
How do you get that in?
Hypoxia. You could
How do you get that in there?
You asked the
Ask them a
expert.
question.
ask Jackie alone.
Ask your witnesses, your experts, anybody that would have that information.
Can you explain to the jury what that is? Or please explain to the jury what that is.
And then very similar on this, North Star, another one that popped up that was, once again, it wasn't that, it was just the most, one that kind of stuck out for me. It had happened earlier. Don't ask double negative questions. So don't ask like double negative and then yes or, like it happened more on cross-examination where we would ask a double negative and ask for a yes or no to a double negative. You're like, which way, So there could have been some objections there, but also it just doesn't look good because the jury's not for sure what the heck you're asking, right?
Is a vague question a valid objection?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, there's no, it
What did you
depends.
say?
Is a vague question a valid objection? Like if they ask my witness like, what does this mean? If it's like really a vague way of saying it, can I object like vague question?
It just depends though, because it depends on how vague.
Mm-hmm.
What would that be called? Just vague question?
Calls for an error? I don't understand what you're asking.
He's asking the other side to ask a vague question. Look, I got a question. Is the question clear?
Not really, no.
Okay, so then what's your objection? What's your objection to a unclear question?
So I have an objection sheet. Vague question is on here, and it is incomprehensible, incomplete, or answer will be ambiguous.
It's a big question, isn't it?
So but the question or the level then becomes what's vague, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something you can claim is vague, but may not be, right?
Here's a big question. Hey, what did the sky look like that day? I'm asking you right now. You have no idea what I'm talking about. You have no idea what I'm talking about daylight. You have no idea what I'm talking about night.
So an objection, vague question.
And then they need to narrow the question down, right?
Vague objection, vague question. If the judge gives you a chance to argue that, the question does not specify what time of day or what day they were talking. The question, a description.
So on the Hamlet examination, I have a note here under the defense, so I'm assuming it was during your direct examination. Was Alex ever brought up by the charity trust? I think he was brought up in and y'all have to help me with this because I don't know off the top of my head, but I think he was brought up in giving stuff to him, but not necessarily the charity trust.
I believe he was.
Because he's not a charity, so I'm trying to figure out why he would.
Yeah, the businesses were, I know, but the businesses were always set in stone, but the people would always change.
Right, but I'm just saying, like, we might wanna relook at that real quick before we include, that was just a question I had, cause.
Yeah, I think that was just me stumbling over my words and not asking what I actually was trying to, but
Yeah,
I'll fix that.
Double check, it just popped up, on my list, cause I was like questioning, this is the area of law I deal with, so I'm like, really attuned to going, hey, whoa, Alex is not a charity, so why would he be on a charity trust?
Wait, hold on, Alex Eubanks is in the charity trust.
Oh, yeah.
5.5%.
Okay, so then you're fine. I just made a note to it, that's why I said that. I was gonna ask, I don't have that.
On that note though, I had a couple different leading questions in there that I caught like as I was saying it and nobody said anything.
Yep.
So many.
The other thing,
It's
plaintiff,
not horrible to let something go by.
well, no, she was direct examination. So, but yeah, it's also what do you get out of it, right? If you object, are you getting anything out of it? Maybe you do object or you don't object, because everything's going your way.
You objected to non-responsive, and then y'all went to this long argument. You know what your response should have been? I asked a yes or no question.
Well, I feel like I did, and then it got.
But you didn't tell
that.
him, you said objection non-responsive, and he responded and said this. You could have said, Your Honor, I asked a yes or no question, and the witness is told to answer yes or no. Cause you ask a yes or no question, and they went into a long narrative, and you objected. That's non-responsive, and he, over here started arguing about the facts.
Yeah.
When the whole thing about it was, you asked a yes or no question and he didn't answer yes or no, he's trying to explain stuff, and you didn't ask him to explain, you just said yes or no.
So, also on the handlet, the plaintiffs, y'all got them to admit, and you did a good job of stopping, like, it didn't even take a whole lot of work, but got them to admit that Dano probably knew what he was doing in the sub when he wrote to the second will, or when he wrote the will. So, I mean, you basically, that's a huge piece of evidence, I don't know if y'all caught that or not.
Yeah.
So the key is why didn't we re-examine on that? We got some information in there, right, on that. So we gotta make sure, that's a big piece, right? Would y'all agree? So y'all are trying to keep it out, right? So you got his attorney admitting that he knew what he was doing when he did it, and they got it in. So that could have been your case right there, but yet we didn't re-examine on that at all, like, or re-examine. So, all right, so that's what the witnesses, in closing, just generally, plaintiff side, you fumbled a little bit on exhibit numbers. I made a note of this mainly because you don't need to know the exhibit numbers. Guess who's seen all the documents that you've done?
The jury.
And the jury.
So just talk about the document. What was it? It was the charity list. You make up your own name for it that describes it. You don't have to have that, because they know what it is. They don't need to know what exhibit number it was. Hey, it was admitted into evidence. It was this. It was the depiction of the sub, whatever it was.
Literally, I had a jury trial, well, I had all my stuff labeled dirt pile number 1, dirt pile number 2, and dirt pile number 3. Cause there's 3 different piles of 3 different locations I was prosecuting a guy for. The code enforcement on this stuff. It doesn't have to be this scientific
No.
fancy. It has to be something that is very easy for the jury in their mind to connect to.
And then, for plaintiff also, is you did well, it's like you were reading my notes, because whoever's doing that, as I'm typing, literally my note says, make sure to use the term testify instead of said. They said, and then literally as soon as I hit enter, move down, then whoever was started saying, so-and-so testified, so-and-so testified. I'm like, all right, it worked. My controls are working. So, but just make sure you're doing that, because everything's testimony, right? It's testified. So don't say he said or she said. It's, they testified in front of you or whatever. And I made a note that said shady. I know you are using the term shady, and that may not be the right descriptor that you're looking for. So you might look for a little, or at least clarify it, because shady can mean a lot of different things.
Well, if you look at the definition of shady, it means that the trees form and stuff.
Yeah. So in kind of your, was it nefarious that we're looking for? I wouldn't use nefarious because the jury may not know, but are we looking at somebody we think are being very suspicious, or it's just a descriptor. It's just a note for that. Just may look at that so that y'all can incorporate that.
Look up the source. Look up synonym.
Defense side, proof level in this case is what?
He had testamentary capacity.
No, proof level.
Beyond.
Oh. Oh yeah, I forgot the
Not
wording.
beyond a reasonable
I
doubt.
forgot the wording, so I was like, I'll go.
So,
Did he say that?
oh yeah.
Did
Oh,
y'all
yeah.
object to that?
No.
Why would they?
Was your let's object
No, other
opening and
side?
closing statements?
Why would they?
Oh, was he saying that?
It was good for them. I just couldn't remember the wording.
Like if he wants his level to be, if he wants to be wrong, he wants you to hold him to
Oopsies.
that.
I thought he was trying to make them have to prove a higher level. What's the objection if someone does that?
Well, there's a special way to object in this too.
Objection, no statement of law.
But I'm saying there's a special way to object, so.
We walking around the room, did they do that in the videos?
Yes.
We asked permission when we first started openings.
So, shady, y'all mentioned shady characters, you mentioned like all these shady characters and all this stuff but in your closing, like you were talking about like shady characters, but nowhere in there, like, did you talk about, like, they previously left on previous drafts and the current draft, right? They left everything to Alex. You're talking about shady characters in your closing, and I think what you were trying to do is kind of, them talk about all these different shady, they were using the term shady, you were trying to incorporate, I get it, but you kind of failed to utilize the information and say, hey, Alex, who they're calling shady, was on previous drafts. It's not like it's like Alex is coming out of the woodwork like he's a long lost cousin that's never been mentioned anywhere. Utilize the facts that you have, right? So that's kind of what I made mention of.
So what are the words for shady on paper?
In this case, it'd probably just be greedy.
Greedy,
That's just what it
suspicious,
is.
Untrustworthy.
untrustworthy.
So just find something else. It was just something it was just more of a note, like, that I would not probably use that. Okay, so previously admitted exhibits. Okay, so it's already admitted. So you brought it in on, let's say it came in on clear. So it's in at the beginning, right? So the clear document A comes in, exhibit A is in. So you wanna come up to your next witness, Dr. Cloth or whoever, and you wanna use exhibit A. All you do is say, I want you to take a look at previously admitted exhibit A. You don't have to ask permission, it's already admitted, it's part of the case, you can use it.
I have permission to approach a witness.
Correct, that's the only thing you're doing. But if the witness already has a copy of it, which they probably don't because it's a new witness. So if that's the case, what you can do is then ask, to approach, right, so that you can give them, and then you go, please take a look at previously admitted exhibit A. And whatever your questions are. That's all there is. You don't have to ask, the judge or anything. Once it's been admitted, it can be used freely. Okay? So
So should we,
yeah.
sorry, should we still use the foundation question so that
Nope.
they don't say lacks foundation?
It's already admitted.
You do
It's
that.
already had the foundation in
Once
it.
it's admitted, whether the facts tell you it's pre-admitted or there, it's done. There's no objection about it coming in.
The foundation and all of that, so the reason why you have foundation, just so y'all have a better understanding, okay? So if I go outside and take a picture of straight out the building that way, what is that a picture of?
Straight up the building that way?
Okay, so here's my question. When was that? That's all you know. I went out of this building and took a picture that way. What time did I take the picture? What day did I take the picture? So the question is what anything that you're trying to depict, you can't tell me when it was, or exactly why it was, or what it is, based on the fact that you didn't take it, I did. You can recognize what's in there, right? But the problem is the person that took it is not there to give all the information or surrounding it. That's what foundation is making sure whoever or whatever evidence you're dealing with, you're getting whoever created the document or utilized the document or knows well about the document, what it is. And you're trying to show that, hey, it's a true depiction of what it is, what it claims to be, so on and so forth. That's why we use, when it comes to doctor's reports, we go through, we utilize who? The doctor, because who wrote it?
The doctor.
So who else knows, 100% if that's exactly what he wrote?
The doctor. No
He's
one
the
else.
only one that would know, right, or she?
Now that's already admitted, and then you start asking, Catherine, who were you playing?
Jackie Lung.
You start asking Lung to give professional opinions about that note, there's still objection. Objection, Lap's Foundation to give a professional opinion about a doctor or whatever. You know what I mean? There's still objective, but the evidence is already in.
Right.
Lunch.
How it's used.
How much more do you mind?
No, that's the end of my, was there anything else that y'all want, does that answer, because I know you had the exhibit, how to reintroduce, does that answer that question? Okay.
Does everybody have lunch plans? Everybody has lunch? Ferguson really does not want anybody to get a ticket or in a wreck going to lunch.
Oh,
man.
yeah.
So,
I think
he asked me, he said, can you encourage them to all kind of stay close, go somewhere or whatever? It is 11:58. So we're gonna go lunch and we'll be back about 1. And then from 1 to 2, we're gonna work on whatever, and then we're gonna do another round of trial at 2.
Okay.
So it gives us an hour.
And when I say at 2, we're starting at 2, so 11:55, we're prepping at the tables.
1:55?
Yeah, that.
No, at 2 o'clock we are starting.
Okay.
Because we have to be out of court by a certain time, and it takes, 2 hours for the trial?
Overall, what do you think of like how we did?
I think you did better today than you did the other day at our office. You're honing in on facts, but just remember, don't go down a rabbit hole unless it makes one of the elements you have to prove more likely or less likely.
I would tell you this, when you go revamp, this goes for both sides, because I don't think either side did the greatest job of this. What are the key pieces of this trial? There's 2 major pieces, right? Is the note, did he have the capacity to make that a will, right? So you have those 3 pieces to make that a will, right? Is that correct? In your,
Yes.
Yeah, but so you have to tell the jury, there's 3 things that have to happen, and these 3 things happen, and this is how they happen, and this person tells us how.
and then you get the evidence in to prove that those things happen. And then you deal with the who ace is, right, in the note, right? So assuming that the note is potentially in, right? Then make the argument about who ace is, and why you think your side is ace and why the other side's wrong. So those are the, everything, every question, everything that you develop in your theme and story should surround those 2 areas. If it's not, it's a waste of time.
Now, if it's something to go through, to prove that somebody's a liar, like what's the one that had exaggerated in the past, it's worth bringing that in to say, hey, you can't believe them saying that. They exaggerate, okay, so talk.
Can we leave our seats?
Yeah. Now, I wouldn't leave anything crazy valuable, like, don't leave your wallet or your phone, but, your paperwork, all that kind of stuff, yeah. And I say that, nobody should be coming in here, but at the same time, we're not gonna guarantee the safety of the people.
Look at the.
So we'll be back at 1, we'll have from 1 to 2,